Elias Varn sat on the cold metal steps of his small home on Frostspire, a lonely moon at the edge of human space. The wind howled over the icy plains, carrying tiny shards of crystal-like snow that stung his face. He pulled his old jacket tighter around his shoulders and stared at the dark sky, dotted with distant stars. Each star seemed to whisper memories he wished he could forget. He had once been a hero, a commander in the great war between human colonies and the Zytherians, a dragon-like alien race. The war was over now, but the scars remained. His left arm bore a deep burn from a plasma blast, and his chest still tightened when he thought of the soldiers he couldn't save. Some nights, he woke screaming, reaching for friends who were gone. Elias had come to Frostspire to be alone, far from cities and colonies. Here he could breathe in silence, away from the noise and the reminders of the past. Yet, despite the quiet, there was a part of him that waited, a small hope he refused to name. He often thought of Lyra, the Zytherian woman who had saved his life during the last battle. She was unlike anyone he had ever known, strong, wise, and kind. When he had expected only enemies, she had shown mercy. When he had thought he was alone, she had reached out. Years ago, she had given him a message, a promise. "One day you will meet them," she had said, her large golden eyes steady and calm. "They are yours to guide." Elias had never known exactly what she meant. Children. Hatchlings. Somehow, the thought had stayed with him, tucked into a corner of his mind. But years passed and there was nothing. No sign. No word. No arrival. Only the silence of Frostspire. He sighed, letting his hands rest on his knees, worn and calloused from years of labor and battle. His home was small but practical, a few rooms with a view of the icy plains, some old tools, and a workbench where he repaired what little technology he still kept. Life here was quiet. Too quiet. Some nights, he felt that even the stars had forgotten him. Tonight, the wind seemed sharper, almost urgent. Elias frowned, sensing something strange. He stood and walked to the edge of the plateau, looking at the dark horizon. Faint glimmers of light danced on the ice, flickering like tiny stars close to the ground. He squinted, his veteran instincts alert. It was too patterned to be natural. His heart beat a little faster. Could it be? He knelt and touched the snow, feeling its icy sharpness bite his fingers. The lights grew brighter, moving slowly in the distance. They weren't meteors or falling debris. They were too small, too controlled, too deliberate. Elias felt a strange stirring in his chest, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something he hadn't felt in years, hope. He whispered to himself, almost afraid to speak the words. Could it really be them? He did not know. He only knew that after so many years of waiting alone, he could feel that something was coming. Something he had waited for all his life, though he did not fully understand what it was. He walked back inside and checked his supplies, though he did not need much. A warm coat, some rations, and a few tools were enough. He had prepared for winters and storms, but never for what might be arriving now. He stared at the small corner of the room where an old, cracked hollow device rested. It was from Lyra. He had turned it on sometimes, hoping for a message, a sign, anything. But it remained dark, silent, for years. Tonight, however, something told him that silence would not last. He could feel it in the air, in the low hum beneath his feet, in the quiet heartbeat of the moon itself. The world felt alive, expectant, as though it held its breath. Elias leaned against the doorframe, looking out at the icy horizon. The wind tugged at his coat and hair, whispering secrets he could not yet understand. For the first time in years he allowed himself a small smile. He did not know what he would find or what was coming, but he felt ready. Ready for the unknown. Ready to face it, whatever it might be. He had survived wars, loss, and loneliness. Whatever came next could not break him. He sat back down on the steps, wrapping his hands around his knees, and looked at the horizon again. The lights were closer now, moving carefully, almost gently. And somewhere deep inside, Elias felt a flicker of something long forgotten. A father's hope, waiting patiently for the first time in decades. And so he waited. Alone, yes, but not entirely empty. For the first time in a long time, he believed that maybe, just maybe, the universe had not forgotten him after all. Elias woke to a soft glow spilling across the icy plains outside his home. The wind was calmer now, carrying only a gentle hiss of the cold. But the lights, bright, flickering, alive, were still there. He rubbed his eyes and stepped outside, the snow crunching under his boots. At first he thought the lights were reflections or some strange weather effect. But as he watched, they moved with purpose, circling slowly over the frozen ground. They were too deliberate, too alive to be natural. Elias's heart began to pound. Could it really be what he had waited for all these years? He crouched and squinted, trying to make sense of the shapes. Then, with a sudden motion, for small forms separated from the lights. They were about the size of large dogs, but their bodies were scaled and glimmered with faint, shifting colors. Tiny wings fluttered on their backs, delicate but strong. Their eyes were bright and intelligent, golden and green, and they stared directly at him. Elias's breath caught. They were beautiful, small dragons. Real dragons. And somehow he felt they recognized him. One of them stepped forward, tilting its head as if testing him. It made a soft chirping sound, a curious little trill that seemed almost like a question. Elias reached out slowly, unsure if it would understand, unsure if it would even allow him near. To his surprise, it did. The dragon brushed against his hand with its small snout, warm despite the icy air. The other 3 dragons moved closer as well, their movements careful and playful. They climbed over the snow in unsteady hops, their wings flaring occasionally as they tried to balance. One of them nudged the first dragon, chirping excitedly, and the 4 formed a loose circle around Elias. He knelt slowly, letting them approach, letting them see that he was no threat. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from an emotion he had not felt in years, joy. He had waited so long, wondered so much, and now they were here. Tiny, living, breathing dragons looking at him with trust and curiosity. And then he heard it. A voice. Not spoken aloud, but inside his mind, soft and clear. "Mama, sorry we're late." Elias froze. He knew immediately whose voice it was. Lyra. She had sent this message through them. Somehow, her words had traveled across space and time, carried in the minds of her children. Tears filled his eyes. He had been alone for so long, waiting, hoping, doubting. And now the universe had delivered. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "It's okay. You're here now." The dragons chirped and cooed, tilting their heads, their small claws brushing against his arms as they moved closer. They were warm and soft despite their scales. One nuzzled his cheek, another curled around his wrist, and the smallest climbed onto his shoulder, settling there with surprising balance. Elias laughed softly, a sound that felt foreign after so many years of silence. It was a quiet, trembling laugh, but it was full of relief and wonder. "You're really here?" he whispered. "All 4 of you." He noticed their markings, faint patterns on their wings and backs that resembled Lyra's scales. Each one was unique, yet unmistakably hers. And yet, they were more than just her reflection. They were alive, curious, playful, and brave. And somehow they seemed to know him as a father, even though they had never met him before. Elias spent hours with them that first day. He showed them how to hop on the icy ground without slipping, how to flap their tiny wings for balance, and even how to make small trails in the snow that looked like patterns only they could understand. The dragons chirped and squeaked, testing each other, testing him, learning quickly. As night fell, the auroras above Frostspire lit the sky in sweeping waves of green and blue. The dragons settled around Elias, curling close against the cold. Their tiny bodies glowed faintly in the moonlight, each pulse of light a heartbeat, a sign of life, a sign of family. Elias looked at them and felt something he had long thought impossible. He felt peace. Not just the peace of a quiet moon, but the peace of knowing he had been part of something greater. Something alive. Something that needed him as much as he needed them. He whispered again, "I'll keep you safe. I promise." And somehow, through the quiet telepathic link he now shared with them, he could feel their answer. A gentle, trusting warmth that said, "We know." That night, Elias did not sleep on the steps as he had done for years. He sat inside, the 4 dragons curled around him like living, glowing blankets. He watched the auroras through the window, and for the first time the stars did not seem lonely. The universe, he realized, had remembered him. And he had remembered how to hope. Outside, the wind whispered over the frozen plains, carrying with it the soft sounds of small claws and wings, the beginning of new stories, the first laughter of dragons, and the quiet heartbeat of a veteran learning how to be a father. The next morning, the frost-covered plains of Frostspire were bright under the pale sun, and Elias Varn felt something he had not felt in years: purpose. The 4 dragon children were awake and restless, chirping, hopping, and flapping their tiny wings in the small courtyard of his home. Their movements were unsteady but full of energy, each one testing their strength, each one curious about the world. Elias knelt in the snow and held out his hand. "Come on, little ones," he said softly. "Let's see what you can do today." The dragons approached cautiously at first, sniffing the air around him, wings fluttering nervously. Then, with a little encouragement, they climbed onto his arms and shoulders. The smallest one, a bright green with gold streaks on its wings, clung to his shoulder like it had always belonged there. The others bounced and hopped around his boots, chirping in excitement. Elias smiled, feeling warmth in his chest. He had spent so many years fighting, surviving, and being alone, that he had almost forgotten how it felt to teach, to guide, to nurture. These dragons, fragile, small, and yet so full of life, were giving him that chance again. He spent the morning showing them simple things. He made small snow mounds and encouraged the dragons to climb over them. They stumbled, fell, and climbed again, squeaking with delight. Elias laughed when one of them accidentally tumbled down and rolled into the snow, wings flapping wildly. He helped it back up, rubbing the tiny scales along its back. "Not bad," he said. "You'll get stronger with practice." Next he tried teaching them to flap their wings and hover slightly above the ground. The dragons hesitated at first, their little bodies trembling with fear, but Elias stayed patient. He encouraged them with calm words and gentle movements. Slowly, one by one, they began to lift a few inches off the snow, wobbling but flying. Their eyes sparkled with excitement as they landed again and again, learning through trial and error. Elias could feel a deep satisfaction in his chest. Teaching them, seeing their joy and determination, it reminded him of why he had fought in the war in the first place. Not for glory or medals, but to protect, to nurture, to give life a chance to thrive. As the sun climbed higher, he led them to the small frozen stream near his home. He showed them how to carefully step over the thin ice without breaking it. They chirped nervously at first, glancing at him for reassurance. One of the dragons, with a golden stripe down its back, looked up at him and flapped its tiny wings as if asking, "Are you sure?" Elias nodded, and with a small leap, it followed him across the ice, landing safely on the other side. The dragons cheered in their own way, chirping and bouncing, and Elias felt his heart swell. He realized that this was more than play, it was trust. They trusted him to guide them, to keep them safe, and he would not fail them. After a long morning they returned home, tired but happy. Elias led them to the small corner of his house he had prepared for them, a place with soft mats, warm blankets, and a little light from the window. The dragons curled up together, tails entwined, wings folded, and their tiny chests rising and falling with each breath. Elias watched them, fascinated by the gentle rise and fall, and felt a sense of peace he had never known. He sat down beside them and stroked the scales of the smallest one, marveling at the softness and warmth. "You're learning fast," he said. "I've never seen creatures like you. You're strong and smart. And I'll make sure you grow up safe no matter what." The dragons chirped in response, curling closer to him. Elias could feel their little hearts beat, and he imagined that, somehow, they understood his words. Even without speech, there was a connection forming, a bond of trust and care, stronger than anything he had known in his life. As night fell, Elias and the dragons sat outside under the auroras, watching the sky blaze in green and blue. The dragons were restless again, flapping and chirping, but now they looked at him with quiet trust. He reached out, letting them crawl onto his shoulders and knees. One rested its head on his arm, and he smiled softly. Elias whispered into the cold night, "I may not be the hero I once was in the war, but I can be your hero now." The dragons chirped as if agreeing, their small bodies warm against him. He felt a strange happiness, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself in a long time. The war, the loneliness, the years of waiting, they all seemed to fade when he looked at these tiny creatures who trusted him so completely. For the first time, Elias understood that family wasn't just about blood. It was about care, protection, and love. It was about showing up, day after day, and being there when someone needed you. He had fought battles across the galaxy, but this, teaching, guiding, protecting these dragons, was a new kind of battle. And it was one he was ready for. That night, as the auroras danced across Frostspire, the 4 dragon children slept curled around him. Their breathing was slow and even, their tiny wings twitching occasionally in dreams. Elias lay back, looking at the sky, and felt hope bloom in his chest. He had been alone for so long. But now, with the dragons at his side, he was no longer lonely. They had arrived, and somehow, through them, life had returned to him. And for the first time in many years, Elias Varn slept with a sense of peace, knowing he had a family to protect, to teach, and to love. The morning after their first night together, Elias woke to a strange feeling in the air. The wind was still, almost too quiet, and the snow sparkled in the soft light of Frostspire's pale sun. The 4 dragon children were already awake, chirping and hopping around the small yard, their tiny wings flapping nervously as they explored. Elias rubbed his eyes and stretched. He had grown used to the chaos of their energy, and today he felt ready for something more. Something different. He sensed it before he saw it, A shift, subtle but powerful, like the air itself was holding a secret. Then it happened. One of the dragons stopped in its tracks, golden eyes wide. The others froze as well, looking toward the sky. A warm glow appeared in the distance, bright and steady, unlike anything Elias had ever seen. It wasn't sunlight or the auroras, though it shimmered like both. The dragons chirped softly, their voices blending in a strange harmony that made Elias's heart beat faster. He stepped closer to them, squinting at the glow. Then he realized it wasn't just a light, it was a message. It moved through the air like it was alive, small pulses of energy shaping words inside his mind. He staggered back, blinking, unsure if he was imagining it. And then he heard her voice. Clear, calm, and familiar. "I'm sorry we're late." Elias's chest tightened. He knew that voice immediately. Lyra. The Zytherian woman he had fought beside, the mother of these children. He swallowed hard, unable to speak, unable to move. The dragon sensed his reaction and nestled closer, chirping quietly as if sharing his awe. The message continued, carried not by sound but by feeling. Duty kept us apart. I wanted to come sooner. But I always hoped you would wait. And you did. Tears welled up in Elias's eyes. He had waited for years, alone on this frozen moon, unsure if the promise had been real. And now, through her children, the message came. She had kept her word even across the vast emptiness of space. Even across time. He knelt in the snow, letting the dragons climb onto him as he tried to process the moment. One curled around his shoulder, another nuzzled his cheek, the smallest pressing against his chest. He could feel them vibrating softly, almost like they were transmitting the message too, echoing Lyra's words. "Mama, sorry we're late." Elias whispered, choking on his words. It's okay. You're here now. You're here." The dragons chirped in agreement, their tiny voices full of energy and life. And Elias realized something profound. Lyra's words were not just a message. They were trust, hope, and love, all wrapped into a single fragile moment. Her children were proof that he had not been forgotten. That his life still mattered. He sat there for a long time, holding the dragons close, letting their warmth seep into him. His mind drifted back to the war, to all the nights he had spent alone, haunted by loss. All the battles, the scars, the sacrifices, it had felt endless. But now, with these small creatures, with Lyra's message carried through them, he understood that life could still bring something new. Something worth protecting. Something worth fighting for, even if the battles were no longer fought with weapons. He looked at the dragons' tiny faces, their golden and green eyes shining in the soft light. Each of them was a reflection of Lyra, yet also unique. They were playful, curious, brave, and resilient. And somehow they were his responsibility now, just as much as he was theirs. Elias spoke softly, almost as if the words were too important to say aloud. "I'll keep you safe. I'll teach you. I'll be here for you every day." The dragons chirped, flapping their wings gently as if promising the same. Elias could feel it, an unspoken bond forming stronger than anything he had known in his life. They trusted him and he trusted them. Together they could face anything. The rest of the day passed in quiet wonder. Elias led the dragons to the small frozen stream nearby and showed them how to step carefully across the thin ice. They laughed and chirped, wobbling and falling but always getting up again. Elias smiled at every stumble, every small success, feeling a deep pride he hadn't felt in decades. As the sun dipped low, the auroras of Frostspire lit the sky in sweeping waves of green and blue. The dragons, tired but happy, curled around Elias, their small bodies warm against the cold. He sat with them in silence, watching the sky, feeling Lyra's presence in every flicker of the light. Her words echoed in his mind again. "I always hoped you would wait. And you did." Elias whispered into the cold night. "I waited. And now I have all of you." He realized then that waiting alone had not been wasted. The years of loneliness, the struggles, the loss, they had prepared him for this moment. For the chance to care for something small and precious, to guide it, to love it. And through the dragons, through Lyra's message, Elias understood that family was not just blood or obligation. It was trust. It was protection. It was love shared in small moments, in lessons, in warmth. And he had it now. That night, Elias and the 4 dragon children lay together, their tiny bodies entwined, their breathing slow and even. The auroras danced above them, a silent celebration of reunion and hope. For the first time in many years, Elias felt truly at peace. He had waited alone for so long and now he was not alone anymore. The morning sun rose over Frostspire, painting the icy plains with soft gold and pale green light. Elias Varn stepped outside, stretching his arms and feeling the cold bite at his skin. But today the chill felt different, not empty or lonely but full of life. Around him, the 4 dragon children were awake and already full of energy, chirping and hopping, tiny wings flapping with excitement. Elias smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest he hadn't felt in years. He knelt in the snow and held out his hand. "Ready to try something new today?" he asked. The dragons chirped in response, bouncing and climbing onto him, their trust clear in the way they moved. Today, Elias had decided it was time for something important. They would learn to fly, not just a few inches above the snow but properly soaring over the frozen plains. It was the first lesson of their life as dragon children, and he wanted it to be perfect. He led them to a small hill, the highest point near his home. The snow crunched under their claws and boots as they climbed, tiny wings stretching in anticipation. Elias watched them carefully, making sure they were steady, making sure they felt safe. He remembered the first time he had held each one, the first time they had chirped at him, curious and trusting. And now here they were, ready to take their first real flight. "Okay," he said softly, "step forward when you're ready. Trust your wings, and trust me." The smallest dragon, bright green with golden streaks, hesitated. Its wings trembled, its eyes wide with fear. Elias crouched, holding out a hand. "You can do it," he whispered. "I'm right here." Slowly the dragon stepped forward and leapt into the air. It wobbled, flapped frantically and then, just for a moment, hovered above the snow. Elias cheered, and the dragon chirped back, landing safely in the snow with a triumphant bounce. One by one the other dragons followed. A golden-striped one lifted with confidence, a blue-green one hovered and tumbled but laughed with delight, and the last one, slightly larger than the others, soared a little higher than the rest, letting out a joyful squeak. Elias's heart swelled as he watched them. They were flying. Real flying, just as Lyra had promised he would witness. He clapped his hands and laughed, the sound carrying over the plains. "That's it. Keep going. You're amazing." The dragons chirped, their wings flapping faster, testing the air, chasing each other in loops and dives. Elias watched every movement, guiding them with careful words and gestures, feeling a connection stronger than anything he had known. After hours of practice, they finally settled on the snow near the hilltop, panting and chirping, glowing faintly in the late afternoon sun. Elias knelt beside them, brushing their tiny scales with gentle hands. "You did it," he said. "You flew. And you didn't just fly, you trusted yourselves, and me." The dragons responded with soft chirps, pressing against him. One climbed onto his shoulder, another curled around his wrist, and the smallest nestled against his chest. Elias could feel their warmth, their tiny hearts beating, and he realized that this moment, simple, quiet, and full of life, was more important than any battle he had ever fought. He looked out over the plains, watching the snow stretch endlessly under the glowing sky. For the first time he felt that the loneliness he had carried for decades had truly ended. These dragons were his family now. They needed him and he needed them. Together they would face whatever came next. As night fell, the auroras began to blaze in brilliant waves of green, blue, and violet. Elias and the dragons climbed back to the hilltop, watching the lights dance across the sky. The children chirped and flapped, chasing the glowing colors in the air. Elias laughed, feeling a joy he had not known since before the war. He could sense Lyra's presence in the quiet glow of the auroras, in the soft pulse of life around him. He whispered into the cold night, "You're safe now. You have me and I have you. We'll face everything together." The dragons chirped in agreement, curling close to him as they watched the sky. Their tiny bodies glowed faintly in the aurora's light, a living testament to hope, love, and the bond between parent and child, human and Zytherian. Elias leaned back, letting the dragons settle around him. He looked up at the stars, feeling their warmth, and smiled. The universe had brought them together, despite the years, despite the distance. He had waited, and now he had a family, a new beginning that was more precious than anything he had fought for in the wars. For the first time in decades, Elias Varn did not feel like a veteran haunted by memories. He felt like a father, a protector, a teacher, and a part of something greater. He had hope, he had love, and he had life. The dragons chirped softly, pressing closer to him, and Elias closed his eyes, feeling the gentle rise and fall of their tiny bodies. He knew that tomorrow and every day after they would grow, they would learn, they would fly higher and further. And he would be there, guiding them, loving them, keeping them safe. Outside, the auroras continued to dance across Frostspire, a silent celebration of reunion, trust, and life renewed. Elias watched the dragons, golden eyes sparkling, green wings twitching in dreams, and felt a peace deeper than he had ever known. He had waited for years and now at last the waiting was over. A new beginning had arrived and together they would soar.